So welcome back to our continuing discussions of Spring. For this, we're going to cover Spring Bean. So Spring Beans. Spring Beans are Java classes that are annotated so they can be created by dependency injection. With Spring acting as an application framework, Spring Beans become the heart of your business logic. The application is already written. You are plugging into it. Spring Beans are the components that are discovered when you do component discovery when your application is first loaded. So we'll create these class libraries here, and we'll create them as Spring Beans. We're going to have a payment service interface, and then we'll have a payment service implementation that will actually be the Spring Bean. And then we'll have a payment that stands for DAO, that's Data Access Object, that will have an interface like that, and we'll have a relationship with the actual implementation payment, Data Access Object implementation. So we'll create these as Spring Beans, and we'll see and test the loading of the objects that are created out of these classes. Okay, let's look at some of the classes I've created here. So let's recall this one. Again, this causes Spring Boot application, causes the Spring Boot to be configured, and the component scan then will scan for our Java Beans or our Spring Beans. Very close concepts. All right, so I have the the DAO namespace here, our package, and here I have the implementation of the interface and the interface itself. Let's take the interface is not too demanding, no methods defined there, and so the implementation is pretty much empty too, except it has this annotation on it, which is at repository. And up here, I have a definition of our different types of component annotations. The component one being the most basic one. So again, the Java Bean, or the Spring Bean, is just a Java class that's decorated with one of these components so that when the component scan occurs in this namespace, it will find classes of this type and be able, therefore, to create objects when dependency injection comes into play. So that's our interface here, simple, nothing, no requirements, and our annotation, which is central to how this is going to work. We have this payment data access object class, remember here, and we'll use it over here in the payment service. So let's take a look at the interface first, and we'll see this interface is a little bit more demanding. It returns a payment data access object when it's called upon, so it'll have a data member of that type. This is a getter and a setter. Look at the implementation. Okay, so here at service, another component annotation that says this is a service type. Essentially annotate Java classes that perform services this way, and then it's also in the package .services. So this implements that interface, and therefore it has the getters and setters that the interface requires. And here we have this auto-wired annotation. And the auto-wired annotation says that this is a dependency injected object. Normally, when you're writing Java code, at this point, you'd either have the constructor, or on this line right now here, you'd actually create the object of this class. Dependency injection is going to take care of that for us when this application runs. The important annotations that we've seen so far, at service, at component would also work, and then for the data access object we've seen at repository, they all work the same way. They all create a Spring Bean class annotation. Now, as we saw before, a testing project is already created for us by the Spring Boot initializer. So we're going to actually take advantage of that and put some code in here. And I have this at Spring Boot test. So that's the annotation that says this is a test class. So it'll be created and run when the unit testing is done. And then we have the at auto-wired annotation again. So this will actually use dependency injection to create an instance of the service. Remember, the service in turn has an implementation of the data access object, the payment data access object within it. So now we have a test method. It's annotated with @test. So when the test JUnit framework runs this, it'll discover the within the Spring Boot test class the @test annotated methods and run them automatically. So assert not null service. That means that we are depending on by the time we get here, dependency injection will have taken care of this object and created it for us. And then also dependency injection would also create the data access object within the service because it's annotated properly as well, as we can see here. Right there. Okay, auto-wired. It should be created as well when that object is created. So to run these unit tests, I right-click here and run as JUnit test. So the Spring Boot is loaded, and the JUnit tests are over here, and we have our test results here. This shows that our test passed, so our service has been created, and the data access object within that is also created. Let's create another unit test method real fast here. So as we see, if it's a unit test method, it needs to be decorated with add test 2. I'm going to assert not null. My purpose here is to create a test that always fails. So assert not null and then pass it a null. And then save that file. And we'll hit this. JUnit test again. And we'll see what happens. It loads our application, runs the JUnit tests. And here we have a passing test still. Our dependency injection is still working. And a failing test here. Okay. So we've seen the creation of Spring Beans in how they work and how they're loaded, and dependency injection. It's as simple as creating classes and methods with the correct annotations and also data members. And we'll see more as we go on. Thank you.